Oh, buddy, Andy here again. Well, last night I was in the pub having a couple of drinks with a good friend of mine, someone that I used to know years ago. And we got talking about music, as we always do. He's a fellow DJ and a member of the sort of Hastings Rock family, if you want to call it that. Great lover of music like myself, and someone I used to do a lot of discos with as well. But, as I say, that's another story. And we got talking about a topic which is similar in a way to a video I did a while ago about Pink Floyd and the way that their music was being sold digitally, etc. Go watch the video. I'll put a link maybe to it, but I forgot what it's called, Pink Floyd versus EMI, I think. But the particular topic here, my friend actually told a story about when we were at school, because I was at school with him many, many moons ago, about a particular science lesson, which same class that I was in, and him and some of his friends sneaked out or bunked off of school, whatever you want to call it, to go and listen to the album Band on the Run by Paul McCartney and Wings, which had just got out. One of these people that I used to know as well had just got a copy of the album, and they were so excited about it, they wanted to hear it so much that they went round to this person's house during the school time, and as it happened, the teacher found out and actually rang up the house, and my friend happened to answer the phone. He said, "Is that Clive?" He said, "Because this is Mr. So-and-so from school. Get back to school now." But one of those things that used to happen. But it brought up that whole idea about listening to music, because I remember in those days you used to do that type of thing. Maybe not bunk off school to go and listen to a new album, but you were excited. You went to the shop, you bought the album in vinyl, obviously, in those days as well. But it doesn't matter, it could be CD or something, or even on tape or mini disc or 8-track cartridge or something, or 78 or something. It doesn't really matter. There's that whole idea of getting that piece of music, getting it home and listening to it, all of it, and maybe even sharing it with your friends. I remember doing that sort of thing myself, sitting down and listening to a complete album. Okay, you had to turn it over, but there was an excitement about it, and one of the reasons for that was the fact that generally when you put that music on the turntable, in the CD player or in the tape deck or something like that, that was the first time that you'd ever heard that piece of music, hence the excitement, hence the fact that you really wanted to rush home and put it on there and hear it and pull the curtains down and turn off the lights or something like that, sit down, relax, and prepare yourself for this new album, possibly by your favourite band, your favourite artist, and just revel in it and enjoy that first listening experience. Now, these days, that doesn't happen. There's a number of reasons for that. One of which is that nowadays, how often do you actually hear an album that you've never heard any tracks from, or you've never heard any of the music from? Yes, I know singles have always been released from albums and sort of pre-released. They quite often, the first single comes out before the album comes out. Nowadays, you might get more than one single. But nowadays also, a lot of the tracks that you hear, those singles come out and they're played on the radio sometimes months, literally months in advance of the actual physical release, whether it be a digital download release or whether it be a physical CD release or something like that, or even vinyl now which they're going back to. So there isn't that sort of sense of anticipation really about things. You've heard some of the music, and quite often the albums are sort of pre-released, they're streamed online nowadays or something like that, or the advanced copies go out, whether it's a promotional tool or something, I don't know, whether it's something that people want to do, either the artists themselves or the record companies. They want their product out, they want to build that excitement, but that excitement has gone because you've heard the majority of the album, you've made up your mind whether you actually want to go out and physically purchase it or not before the actual release date comes along. There isn't that sort of sense of anticipation. I can't imagine people sort of standing outside of a record store to get a particular album. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it was different then because you just hadn't heard it. You got home, as I said, and you played that, and I remember doing it. I remember hearing certain tracks on the radio. I think, wow, I've got to go out and get that album, because that was the only way that I was going to be able to hear the rest of it. So I just think that whole listening experience has changed, and for me, it's changed for the worse. Partly because that sort of sense of excitement, etc., has gone. But the way we consume music, I listen to music differently to what I used to. Now, it's not often that I buy a physical CD release for a start, so there isn't that whole idea of putting the CD, even in the CD player, or more often than not, into the computer and making it an MP3 to put on your iPod or something. But I don't, and you probably don't as well, listen to whole albums. I talked about the concept albums recently with the Pink Floyd, and I do listen to some of those albums in a complete way. thinking about this particular topic because it has something I have been thinking about. We just brought it home with that conversation last night. I have been listening to whole albums. Certainly, I was listening to a David Bowie Hunky Dory album the other day, and things like usually older albums. And that's another point. There's not many newer albums. I'm not saying they're not put together that way. I'm not saying they're not made as not a loose concept or something like that. But I don't listen to them as a whole now. I listen to single tracks. We download single tracks. I know I do that all the time, just by the odd track here and there. I don't find myself listening to the same album over and over again. The last one that I possibly did that with was the last U2 album, No Line on the Horizon, but even then I still didn't listen to that in the same way that I used to listen to albums years ago, partly because once again I'd heard several of the tracks off of it. Also, I'd had a pre-release sort of week streaming or something of the album, so once again I knew the album before I even bought it, and maybe it lessens that impact of it again. So I'd be love to know what anybody else thinks, whether you've noticed this and whether you think this is detrimental to music generally, or conversely, I suppose, if you doubt or consume, should we say, individual tracks, etc. Now, maybe it widens your sort of listening. Maybe you hear more bands, more artists, more different types of styles of music, should we say, because you now have more time to actually listen to more. Instead of focusing on one particular genre or one particular artist or one particular album, which you would play over and over again, as enjoyable as that may be, maybe because you're only hearing or even buying certain tracks off of albums, it gives you that time, that chance to actually go away and explore and hear other music. Some bands now are going down that route, Radiohead being one, where they don't intend to make albums anymore as such. They're going to release tracks, and that's part of what I'm saying here. Maybe that's the way that things are going now. With the age of the album, or the classic album as it was, has changed. Now we may get albums, but they're more collections of songs than albums. If that makes any sense to you, it does to me, but that could just be me, I suppose. So there you go. I thought something to think about there, and something to tell me about, I suppose. For a music lover like me, how do you consume your music now? Does this, maybe this has made you think, actually, yeah, that's true, I do that. Or maybe you still get that sort of buzz about a new album. I'm not saying that I don't, but I don't listen to it. I don't sit down because of all those other distractions. And maybe that's another point. Maybe in times gone by, especially someone of my age, there wasn't the other distractions. We didn't have the internet, we didn't have computers, we didn't have computer games even in those days, didn't have all the TV stations, etc. that you've got now that maybe take your time away, as I've talked about myself, and about all those distractions in the modern world, etc. You had the time maybe to sit down and listen to those albums, whether it was because of that sense of excitement, whether it's because that was all you could hear. I don't suppose I was exposed to as much music back in the 70s or even the 80s possibly, because there wasn't the way to hear it. There wasn't the TV stations, the MTVs of this world. Not that they do anything about music anymore, but you know what I mean. The music videos and that. You can watch music videos all day long, 24/7 now, and see so many different styles of music. So why do you need to go and buy it in the first place? Years gone by, a couple of radio stations, possibly different in America. You didn't have that choice. If you wanted to hear something, you physically had to go out and buy it, or maybe listen to it in the store, which they used to let you do. I'm not sure they do that sort of thing very much now. So there you go. Are we consuming music differently? I know I certainly am, especially in this digital age. I'm listening to as much music as I've ever done, I think, but not quite in the same way that I used to. And I wonder if you're the same. So food for thought there, music for thought, or whatever. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thanks for your time. I'll speak to you again soon. Goodbye.